Having determined that we have no interaction between our categorical variables, we can now move on to step 3, where we look to see which of our categorical variables have an effect on our dependent variable. In this case, we actually see that both of them do. Looking at our p-values here for motivation and for training method, we see both of these are less than 0.05. And so we conclude that both motivation and training method have an effect on time to train, on completion time. To see exactly how this works, we can again do some Bonferroni post hoc testing. So let's modify our task here. Go down to post hoc tests, and instead of least squares, we're going to click arithmetic. Click add. Up here, we can change motivation to true. That's going to tell Enterprise Guide that we do want to see what the effect of motivation is. Same for training method. We'll change that to true. Our third one here is for the interaction. And if you had found that you had interaction, you would want to change this to true as well. I'm going to change it to true just to show you what happens. Finally, we want to change our comparisons method here to Bonferroni. Okay, that's it for the post hoc tests. There's one more thing that I want to change. I'll change my plots down here. And I'm going to go with a custom list of plots. I don't want the diagnostic, but I do want the interaction plot. Not that we have interaction here, but I want to show you what this would look like if you were looking at interaction. Okay, let's hit run and see what we get. The top output should be the same. We're running the same model, so we expect the same output. Our first thing that we see is an interaction plot. The interaction plot is showing us how the means differ for the different groups. We've got the motivation levels, high and low, and we've got the training methods represented by our red, green, and blue lines. Red for computer-based, blue for classroom, green for self-study. Now, if we had absolutely no interaction, or if we had estimated this without an interaction term, these lines would be exactly parallel. Looking at the interaction plot, when we see lines that are far from parallel, or even more extreme, lines that are crossing one another, that's a strong interaction that we have interaction. A strong indication that we have interaction. In our case, these lines are pretty close to parallel as far as things go. So that is part of our reason why Enterprise Guide is not determined that there is interaction between these two variables. Okay, heading down, we're going to look at our Bonferroni tests in turn. Firstly, we've got the motivation level, and we see that low motivation is estimated to have a 28-hour completion time, high motivation a 14.5-hour completion time, independent of the other variable, independent of the training method. You'll also see these two groups don't overlap. So our Bonferroni post hoc test has determined that low and high have significantly different completion times. Moving down to the Bonferroni grouping for the training method. We've now got our estimated mean completion times for the three groups. Computer-based takes the longest, followed by self-study, followed by classroom. But we don't have significance between all of these in particular, because computer-based and self-study are grouped together. Computer-based is not significantly different from self-study. Because self-study and classroom are grouped together in the blue group, self-study and classroom are not significantly different from one another. But you'll see that computer-based and classroom are never in the same group. They're not both in the red group and they're not both in the blue group. So our test is telling us that computer-based and classroom are significantly different from one another, that we can determine that the completion time for computer-based learning is significantly longer than for classroom learning.